Hi, my name is Siew. I'm a physiologist slash pharmacologist based at University College London as part of the London Tubular Centre based in London, UK. So I've been part of the Open Science AWG community for about almost approaching 4 or 5 years at this point. I joined towards the end of COVID in 2020. So the thing that motivated us to join was the possibility to meet other researchers who weren't necessarily directly attached to space agencies, but were just interested in doing space research, either as those with a passing interest or those who did it full time from all across the world in multiple disciplines. And we were introduced through Afshin Beheshti, Alison French, and Ryan Scott, who told us that we'd be a really good fit as somebody coming from a physiology and a medical background. That was myself and my colleague, Ben Walsh. Oh, they've helped us get over many, many challenges. First of all, when we started, we didn't even know what galactic cosmic radiation was, apart from the fact it gave the Fantastic Four their superpowers. So that was quite a good one for us to learn that our mice weren't going to become Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Girl, or the Thing, or Flame On for the Torch. Instead, they would meet perhaps a grimmer end. So that was the first thing we learned. We were then really surprised to learn that astronauts got kidney stones at a super high frequency. There was even an astronaut in the 70s, a cosmonaut, I should say, who almost had to be emergency deorbited, but he passed the stone pond spontaneously. So those things got us really interested. We tried to unpick some of the mechanisms of that, and we realized that there's a big gap here. A lot of people hadn't been studying the space race. And so we learned a lot from people doing omics research. We found out about the big collaborative effort to look at mitochondrial stress, and that got us interested in doing a big collaborative project of our own. And so we start recruiting people to look at various biological levels from epigenetics to proteomics to phosphoproteomics, imaging data, clinical biochemistry as one big massive study. The AWGs have given us lots of opportunities, not just within space research, but also outside of that. So we've built quite a large network of people with amazing backgrounds, incredible diversity of skills, who are able and willing to work with us on other projects in our normal day-to-day kind of work. So we look at a lot of rare disease patients, and so we have people coming on board to help us analyze some of the new omics data that's coming from that. It also allowed us to build up locally as well as internationally collaborators who were in space research or who weren't, who wanted to get involved because it was so exciting. So we in our lab learned to do spatial transcriptomics, how to do phosphoproteomics, for example, how to process these samples, how to integrate these things as well. And we learned a lot about how some of these experiments are conducted, and especially about the real constraints of doing space research, your limitations around how the samples are processed, the n numbers that you're often limited to, and some of the extreme conditions that any biological sample is exposed to in a space environment. For me personally, it's also meant that I've been able to travel to visit some things like ESA out in Belgium. I've been to some of their sites. I've been over to NASA in California and Texas and seen the bases and been in some rooms. It's been amazing to kind of get firsthand experience there. It's allowed me to work with some people on kind of improving the methods that they do and bring my expertise to the table. And relatively recently, I was appointed as one of the upcoming SciX Explorer ambassadors. So I'll be traveling around, spreading the good word on open science from the point of view of physics and biology. our paper contributed to SOMA being formed. So we were actually in contact already with the Nature Medicine deputy editor. And we then told Chris and Afshin, and then they had contacts with the Nature editors, and then we approached both of them together to form the package. So the I4 was already happening, the JAXA stuff was already being talked about, and then we were already considering doing this kidney-based project that no one had done because it would have been the first ever data sets to really investigate what happened and do imaging studies in spaceflight animals, and then also to look at the effects of simulated galactic cosmic radiation from the proper GCR simulator, the complex ones. And we went to Nature with this, and Nature Medicine, to say, like, this is something you're interested in. And then from that, it exploded into, originally there was about 100 papers that were going to go in, and then about 50, and then down to the 40 that finally got accepted. So when the package became a reality, we then said we shouldn't just keep it to these 2 mouse studies, because the Nature Medicine said to us, you should really have some human data. And this is when the AWG kicked in, because at that point, Afshin was like, oh, I can put you in touch with Scott Smith. I can get you historical NASA data. So that happened. And then Chris was already part of stuff. So we're like, okay, let's get Inspiration 4. And then Fumi presented the JAXA. Okay, let's get the JAXA stuff. That built out our human story. And then we start saying, okay, if we've got all of this, we need to bolster the mouse stuff. Let's analyze all the stuff in GeneLab and do a big GeneLab-based project with all the AWG. And then they all came on board. And then we sourced a few people outside of the AWG who had been funded by Trish and other things like that. I think you get as much as you put in is definitely is definitely the motto I would kind of be prescribing to people. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the AWGs have grown significantly in size from when I first got involved. So it can really feel impersonal and like you're one of hundreds, which you are, but it doesn't have to feel like that. So I think don't be afraid to throw your camera on and ask a question when there's an opportunity to do so, or talk in the chat. But a real way to kind of get to know people and involved is to jump on some of the side projects that are happening. People present something, they're saying, oh, I'm looking for people to get involved. Even if you're just going to lend advice and you figure out maybe after 2-3 meetings that like you can't contribute or it's not your thing, you'll have gotten to know people in that process. And then if you're in a position to do so, trying to meet up in person, like by going to things like ASGSR or NASA HRP or ISOP or COSAR, all these meetings that kind of happen across the world, building those relationships is really good. So the network building is the thing I would highly recommend to anybody, because that has been the biggest gift that AWG has given myself and Ben. It gave us access to people with incredible skills and knowledge that we could apply in many different things that we do. And so your network is really the most important thing, and that's access to samples, access to techniques, access to know-how and expertise and knowledge on these weird and wonderful things. I think spreading the word to your colleagues who may be not involved in space research is a good thing to do. Everyone lights up when they hear that they have something in space that they can look at and do something with straight away. So I have colleagues who do neuroscience, others who do endocrinology, and if I tell them, look, here's some transcriptomics for some adrenal glands from mice that have been in space, or here's some spatial and single cell transcriptomics that's just been released for various parts of the brain, it gets them really, really excited. And for some of them, it lets them kind of put it in a thesis or reference it in a paper as like a little side thing, but it still builds part of the big picture and fits it into the terrestrial research that we do. So that would be the thing I would say, is that it's a good talking point for kind of like parties or if you're trying to get on somebody's good side, especially when you tell them that you can request samples from NASA for free and they will pay for the postage and packaging. I mean, the only strings attached, you share the data and you go back and forth to make sure the idea is good. I mean, that's a win-win deal. So free samples and free data, what's not to like?